Hello, everybody. It is Robert Adducci here with Tim Brown, studio director for Ulysses International, and we are live with Ulysses Worlds. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, how's it going today, Robert?
Good, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
And welcome, folks in the chat. Phantom of Truth, I see you in there. Good morning to you, and good day. So let's get into it. Let's start talking about what we've been up to this past week.
Yeah, we're still looking at, obviously the convention season for everybody has changed greatly. We've already made a lot of announcements about that. We're going to reiterate some information here today about conventions that we're attending and how we're doing that. We'll start with Origins. Of course, everybody knows that Origins the physical convention's been delayed until October 7th to the 11th, but they are throwing Origins online June 19th through 21st, and those were the original dates. Is that right, Robert?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you want to run anything that's a Ulysses product, you want to send us an email at contact@ulysses-vila.com. And again, as always, we'll post all of the contact information for everything we talk about after the show. What can you tell us about our own Ulysses Online convention this year, Robert?
Yeah, we just made an announcement last week that we are going to have a convention online, and that's going to run July 24th through 26th. And it will be our first online convention, hopefully the first of many. And then we will, it's going to be cool because we're going to be working directly with our German compatriots to kind of create a continuous convention experience, 24 hours a day for that entire weekend.
You're going to stay up for 72, how long? A long
No, I
time,
thought you were
Robert.
staying
Well,
up.
thank you, by
I
the
thought
way,
you were staying up.
in advance for that. No, we're going to have continuous coverage. We're going to pick basically half of the time and run that in English and pick the other half of the time and run most of that in German. But we will be sure to have an online help situation going on that can respond to either language questions for the entire length of the show. The streaming program will run out of our Twitch channel. A Discord server will be spun up for the RPG sessions. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll have different channels for everybody to kind of be in, channels for different panels, channels for the games. So you guys can organize yourself kind of all together. And then as we kind of figure out what we're, how we're getting people to sign up, we will make sure to let you know about that. One thing today, the German crew got their online con package up, and so with that, you can purchase the convention cup, the dice, a t-shirt, and a program booklet. We'll get ours up shortly, and you guys can start getting buying that, and as soon as they're over here, we will ship them out to you.
Right. So if you want to get that early enough, get a pre-order into us as soon as we have that set up. We'll be sure to get those packages out in time so that you'll have your T-shirt and your dice and your convention cup and all of those things when you're participating online. So yeah, we'll get that up for everybody just as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. Gen Con has been canceled, but they'll be doing Gen Con online, and it will be the same date, so July 30th through August 2nd will be Gen Con online, and we will, we'll be sure to, we'll have some content in there. The stuff that we were originally going to do at Gen Con, we're still going to try to do them online, which should be interesting. We were planning to do a lot of myth stuff there, and so the Dawn of Heroes, we're looking to have that up on Tabletop Simulator, maybe to run some play tests for you guys.
Right, and a lot of things for the associated Myth role-playing game, Myth Tales of Legend, will be going on as well. So just to be clear, Gen Con online will be during the original dates of Gen Con. That's July 30th through August 2nd. Mm-hmm. Our convention, Ulysses Con Online, will take place the weekend before that. So that's a lot of content over those 2 weekends for many of our titles.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Torg Eternity. So the Cyber Papacy PDFs were released last week. So a lot of backers have been grabbing those up. We've got a lot of great feedback from people who are all picking those up now. And once the backers have their content shipped, we'll also open up purchase for the general public of both physical and PDF products. So that's all for Cyber Papacy, which we're finally getting a handle on now. Thank you for your patience, and we're glad to get that out to everybody.
Yeah.
But what can you tell us now about our next release, which is going to be Tharcold?
Yeah, so Deanna just put up the new Tharcold preview on the website. It includes a little map of the kind of area controlled by Tharcold, as well as it talks about the state of the possibility wars in Russia, the Tharcold axioms, and the world laws of Tharcold, which
Right.
include the law of conservation of evil, which is a great name, the law of cynicism, and the law of haunts. So check those out, and we'll be doing one or two a week for the next few weeks until the crowdfunding starts.
Terrific. So we've also got our Stay at Home and Play Torg Eternity, a new campaign to help you pass the time and learn a new game while you're at home. It still features a brand new Torg Eternity quick start called Up the Creek. And that quick start is a 1 hour demo and includes pre-generated characters, a map, and the monster blips that you need. We recently added the Day One Adventures and Game Master screen, and also the archetypes as pay what you want. So for very little money, you can kind of dive in and see what this is all about. That entire article is at ulysses-us.com, so go check it out.
Yeah, and every Tuesday at 5:30, JM, the GM, is running Torg Eternity. Their new campaign is the Four Horsemen, and it includes Ross Watson, one of the Torg Eternity designers, as a player.
Did you do a walkthrough of the Living Land adventures from day one? Where can people see that?
Yeah, so you can get that on YouTube. So I read like the intro for the Day One adventures, and then the first Living Land adventure, which has like three scenes in it. So we went through that over a couple of days, and then when I'm finished doing what I'm currently doing on Ulysses Grab Bag Show, I'll go back and probably do some more Torg Eternity read-throughs on the shorter adventures.
Awesome. So beyond Torg Eternity, we're also doing some things streaming for the Aventuria adventure card game. And on Saturdays, we've been uploading videos of Eric Simon playing solo adventures. That's always Saturdays at 11 a.m. Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking with Eric just the other day. I know he's got more in mind that he's uploading all the time. So how many of those are there to view now, Robert?
I think there's 5 or 6 of them. Yeah. And we got a couple
So
more in the
yeah,
hopper, so there'll be more coming up.
and beyond just streams, we're the Aventuria card game. We've got new releases obviously coming up. It's very popular, and we've got a lot of good fans, and the audience is growing, and we're glad to have that. And I can let slip just on a little rumor level that we are looking into the possibility of bringing that out in a more electronic format for fans as well. And I'll simply leave it at that.
Nice. Cool. Well, let's talk about Myth, Tales of Legend. So every week, Ross and GM have been hosting the campfire chat on Thursdays at 11 a.m. where they talk about all aspects of the game. They alternate. Kind of one week is rules, and then the next week's it's kind of story and settings. This last week's show was about the ins and outs of combat, and today's show will be a lore segment about the soot-stained bastion of Blackwall. I love
The soot-stained bastion of Blackwall.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
it.
So as I was putting that show together, that's kind of something that JM said, and I really like that description. And so it's really cool to hear them talk about what they're doing and sort of like where some of these
Right.
ideas come from, how the original game, has some small details, but Keith and them are just kind of letting them run with details
Right.
that they make up. So it's very cool.
I know that we're looking at having some of the original guys like Keith and Brian be a part of our online conventions so that they can take part in discussing some of the lore and how many of the things they came up with to create the original Myth universe. So be sure and check that out as well.
Yeah.
As for the new release of the board game, Myth Dawn of Heroes, we'll have more articles about Dawn of Heroes up tomorrow. And you can catch prior articles on the Acolyte and the Hunter on the website and also on YouTube. What's happening tomorrow with that?
So we will be premiering a new hero and kind of Eric goes through and kind of talks about kind of what's changed with that hero and why they have decided to make those changes. So it's really interesting if you'd like to both get a little preview of what's coming up and also, a little behind the scenes on why they did that. And
Terrific.
that'll come up. We've been doing these in sort of two parts. So one is the website article, which has all the text and the images, and then we do a video of Eric kind of talking about what he did and show the images as well. So you can either watch them on video or you can listen to them if you don't like reading stuff.
We're turning all of our main guys into stars, and we have one standing by to talk about his products just coming up in a little bit. But hang on, before that, we're going to talk about the Dark Eye a little bit. The Gods of Aventuria crowdfunding has been given a date. That will start on July the 21st and run through August 11th. That's the crowdfunding for the Gods of Aventuria book and the Theater Nights campaign books 3 through 6. So all of that's going to be wrapped up into a single crowdfunding. That's pretty exciting.
That's my mistake. I think it should be 4 through 6. I think 1 through 3 is already out.
Yeah, I think you're right. See, you got to watch the cue cards on stuff like that.
That's right. My bad. So there've also been, there've been more teasers of the Book of Heroes, which is the Dark Eye computer RPG that's coming out. I think it was delayed a little bit, but it looks like finally it's coming out June 9th is what it's scheduled on. So you can go and you can put that on your Steam wish lists. If you go to Steam and find Book of Heroes, you can put it on your wish list and you can see all of the videos they've released for preview. So looks really cool. I'm excited to check that out for sure.
Very cool. And then in addition, also for the Dark Eye, Robert's been doing a read-through of the first Theater Nights adventure. That's why he's so up to speed on Theater Nights. The White Lake. And so far it's had 3 episodes. And when is your next one?
So that next one will be tomorrow.
Okay.
So I've gone, like I said, it's been 3 episodes. I read the intro on 1 episode, then I did part 1 on in the 2nd episode, and then I'm into kind of part 2. And I'll kind of continue going through that. I'll probably got actually like 3 or 4 more episodes of that. There's a decent amount of content there, and I really love reading through the campaign on stream. Kind of allows me to sort of learn it myself, but also kind of see what people have been what people have done in their campaigns.
Sure.
And I really like the way the adventures are laid out. They're really kind of friendly for GMs. They kind of tell you. I really like how they tell you which NPCs are super important, which events are super important for not only for this adventure, but for the future. They lay a lot of great details down that you can sort of put hints at, and then they'll come into play later, which I think is a really cool way to do things.
Very cool. So we want to move on to another game line, talk about Fading Suns. Robert, who do we have to help us talk about Fading Suns today?
Well, yeah, so we have Bill Bridges with us. Welcome, Bill.
Da, 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 da.
So Bill Bridges, you might know Bill from his work on Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Awakening, Promethean, Star Trek, and of course Fading Suns. So Bill, give us the elevator pitch of Fading Suns for those who are new to the game.
Well, Fading Suns is a sci-fi game, and we call it a far future passion play. It's sort of a dark ages in space setting. Humanity spread among the stars, built a republic of high technology and universal emancipation, then squandered it, fought over it, and finally lost it, and everything's collapsed. And so now you've got noble houses who've risen up to rule the known worlds, vying against the priests of the Universal Church, and then there are the merchant guilds, the last holders of the secrets of technology, and they all have this sort of political détente constantly going as they try to eke their living amongst these far planets and strange, bizarre things left over from the ancient jump gate makers and other strange creatures, and the darkness and all sorts of psychic powers and weirdos and barbarians on the borders.
Nice.
Is Weirdo a character class?
We did have a book once called Weird Places.
So
when did Fading Suns first come out?
Fading Suns first came out in 1996, that summer. It was released roughly around the same time as a strategy computer game called Emperor of the Fading Suns. And in that, you ran a whole strategy campaign to try to become the Emperor. And the role playing game is set in the aftermath. We chose an emperor just for our timeline. You could choose your own by running the emperor or the Fading Suns computer game. But so now we've got this one emperor, Emperor Alexius Hawkwood, and it's been a long enough time since that he's now got a piece that's been going. So it's all this kind of espionage is the kind of Cold War right now. It's not an outright flinging lasers at each other. It's more of a Three Musketeers sort of courtly intrigues sort of situation.
Nice. So back in May, the Kickstarter raised 184,000 with 1,000 backers. So congrats to you, Bill.
Well done, Bill.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And recently
Backers.
Yeah. Recently the manuscript PDFs for the main books came out to backers. What's the response been for those?
So far, it's been pretty good. I haven't heard anything really bad. No one's had to strangle me yet. So yeah, it's actually been really good. I've been quite pleased.
So you're not in an undisclosed location? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm on a far future planet somewhere. No, it's been great. I like what I've seen so far. They've been very helpful in catching all my little errors, which, we have books these sizes. They're inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to catch them. So that stuff will all be cleaned up. I've even added a few little rules tweaks when they notice that something's been missing or wasn't stated properly enough. So
Cool.
They've been really helpful, the whole thing.
Thank you to everybody who's pitching in on that.
Yeah, it definitely helps for the final product. So for people that maybe missed the Kickstarter, what's kind of changed from previous versions of Fading Suns to this new version?
Well, the rule system really updates, I think, to a more modern RPG. There's all sorts of things in between the last times an edition came out that I think are real innovations in tabletop role playing. Fading Suns is always one of the rule systems has always had a little bit of a problem with being a little rough on players at times and not being able to hit easily. So this new system fixes that, I think, by giving them a lot more control over their characters through victory points. They can spend them on all sorts of things. It's not just damage dice like it was in previous editions. And so they have a lot. And as their characters grow, they get more of these ability to hold on to more of these victory points too. So, and that's a big advantage for more experienced characters. And so it's just, I think that we've streamlined the character creation a bit to where it's a little easier for someone who's new coming into it to just plop, 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 create a character. They don't have to sit there with the agony of choosing, what am I going to spend my points on here, there, whatever. Although if they want to, there's always the custom method. They can do it that way.
Hey, what I was going to ask, in addition to sort of rules updates and changes, what's changing with the setting?
Well, the setting, we've advanced it in time. We've always in Fading Sun sort of kept it 3,000 years ahead. And it's been, 10 years since anything significant had happened, really 20. And Emperor Alexius has been fully establishing what's called the Pax Alexius, his peace. And as I said, all the noble houses are still grumbling about the situation of him winning. They've just taken it down into a more espionage level. The big thing was the emperor finally married and produced an heir, but instead of choosing one of the other noble houses and thus exalting them up into the imperial level, he married a barbarian. Good Lord. There are all sorts of these other star empires outside of the frontiers of what we call the known worlds. And some of those are the Voldrock barbarians. And they basically make a lot of their wealth by raiding into the known worlds. They've been stealing stuff. And Alexius kind of not only headed that off, but also has extended now into their space by claiming the world where the Empress came from. And so he's making a definite move over there and then calming some of the raiding against the known worlds. And he has an heir now. And he doesn't have to actually share that power with the other noble houses because she's from none of them.
Nice.
Awesome.
So there've been a lot of cool little changes and big changes as well. If anybody's in the chat and you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will get to them. So if you are just seeing this now for the first time and you missed the Kickstarter, you can still get in. We've got a late pledge going for Fading Suns on Game On Tabletop. So you have about 4 more days. I think June 11th, June 11th or June 7th? Uh,
7th.
7th. Okay. So 4 more days until this game on tabletop late pledge ends. So please go check that out. And you can, I think you could still get basically the same deals that we did during the
Right.
Kickstarter, right?
Hmm.
That's,
Yeah.
yep.
So
There are a
Bill,
few things that were part of that Kickstarter only that you can get through the late pledge,
Hmm.
that like the slipcase and stuff that I
Right.
don't believe we're going to make available or can make available really
Yeah, I don't
outside of
believe.
that. So do it now if you want it.
Right.
all right. So since the Kickstarter's ended, have you been spending your leisure time, Bill?
Leisure time. That's a science fiction concept. I don't believe it actually exists.
It is my job to make sure that Bill has no leisure
Bingo.
time.
Now, I've been working like crazy to get some of these other books done and out because we have more Fading Suns books in the works
Nice.
and keep coming with them. So, yeah, doing a lot of that.
So,
So,
you've been working with the working on this game for for years. You were one of the co-creators. So, how have fans over the years sort of influenced the game?
uh, wow. I mean, certainly, you see stuff all the time and someone will make something up for their game or put something on a fact somewhere and I'll go, oh, wow, I never even thought about that part. And
Mm-hmm.
they're touching on things you didn't think about or didn't have time to.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that stuff eventually, in terms of ideas, makes its way through and back into what I'm doing, or I may be doing it differently, but at least it spurred me to think about something on that level that I hadn't before.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, they're definitely it's kind of a living game. You get to see what they're doing with it, and it makes me think of things maybe in different ways.
Nice. Yeah. It's always interesting when when fans do that. They just they could just be asking questions, or maybe they say they decided to do it this way in their game, and you're like, oh, I should have done that, or that was a great way to do it. Yeah, it's always interesting how the game changes after you're done touching
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Nice. So you've said you're working on more projects or more books that we've not announced yet. But what's sort of your not on a specific product scale, but just on kind of a long-term vision for the line?
Well, the known worlds are going to get shaken up pretty much following once we release this certain supplement that we've been talking about for ages, that everybody keeps asking about, including on the chat here. I know. See, yeah, War in the Heavens 3. Yeah, we're going to do it. But we've got to reestablish the situation first, and plus there's all sorts of new clues we're going to be rolling out in these upcoming books about where that's going to be heading, and to set you up for that situation. And following on the War of the Heavens 3, there's going to be some revelations that shake up some of the status quo in the known worlds. But my lips are sealed on that.
What?
So for those that are not so for those that are new fans, kind of what was War of the Heavens? What was War of the Heavens 1 and 2?
War in the Heavens was a series where we examined some of the weird alien empires, like the Vow hegemony, which is a super high-tech alien empire on the border of the known worlds. And they've kind of cut off there. They don't allow humans in except on very limited situations, but they've got super high-tech. And some of that has leaked into the known world. So when your nobles fight with energy shields to prevent, swords from getting through to them or bullets and stuff, that's stolen Vow tech. And on a lot of starships too, the energy shields that protect the ships as they're going through space or against blasters and stuff, stolen Vow tech. And the first one of those books examined the Vow and what they were all about to a certain degree, and the other one examined the symbiotes. They're a race of shape-changing sort of parasites who are trying to make their way into the known worlds, but have been largely stopped on one world called Stigmata, where there's a constant war going on against them. The known world set up the Stigmata garrison, and so you've got some of the toughest fighters up there constantly. You've got Brother Battle, which is a church order. They fight also with Church Thayer, not just technology. And that's one thing they found that worked pretty well against the symbiotes was psychic powers and theurgy, which up to that point the church had pretty much disallowed. This stuff was considered heretical and evil. But as soon as they realized, oh, this stuff gives us an advantage against these symbiotes, they sort of allowed certain situations, and you could go do it up there. But that's a really tough military gig for you to go through, tour duty on Stigmata. However, recently, one of the famous sort of characters we had in the game, a brother battled, Lady Theophana al-Malik, who was actually a suitor to the Emperor. He had this sort of love triangle going on with Salandra Ducatos. She disappeared on Stigmata. No one knows exactly what happened. She's presumed dead, but the symbiotes have fallen back since that. So something she did, people suspect, has weakened them and pushed them back and given everybody a little bit of breathing room.
Nice. So,
And so War in the Heavens 3,
mhm.
to finish the question,
Yes.
the subtitle is Pantheon because it starts to look at the Anunnaki, the jump gate builders, the ancient alien race who everybody lives among the ruins of their stuff, and they've got all sorts of. Their technology is so high it's incomprehensible. It's the Arthur C. Clarke adage of that technology high enough it's going to seem like magic, and well, it's practically magic for all intents and purposes. And so, War in the Heavens 3 will give you a glimpse at the Anunnaki and start to begin to peel back some of the onion layers about what those guys might have been about.
And so to get there, you talk about having to kind of lay some things down first. Are we gonna kind of like re-release War in the Heavens 1 and 2, or like what's the path towards that?
No, not immediately. There's some elements that'll come in, but you won't need to see those books. It wasn't a series in terms of 1, 2, and 3. It was more just this is a series of books that presents alien empires.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to know about the Vow or the symbiotes to get into War in the Heavens,
Okay.
Pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you extra levels and layers onto the Fading Suns universe of what's going all around.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things in Pantheon will tie into some of these. They might help explain a bit more about what some of that Vow tech is about, especially their prophecy engines. They're all obsessed with this sort of devices that tell them what's going to happen, or at least what they think is going to happen. And then maybe what's going on with the symbiotes and why they're so susceptible to occult powers and so forth. But you won't have to have those books to adventure in Pantheon. The books traditionally was half source book, half big epic adventure that then lets you learn about that stuff. And War in the Heavens Pantheon is kind of more epic adventure that is also a source book.
Nice.
So,
go ahead.
just for my edification, all of that comes out. Our next wave of products would include basically what, as you envision it now, Bill?
Well, the next wave of products, we look into that the barbarians, the Voldrock barbarians, because we have to set up. There's strange things starting to go on in Voldrock space, and some of those things will clearly hint at what things that might lead you into War in the Heavens. And then we'll soon after that be getting into the psychic powers a lot more. We were able to do some of them in the core book, but there's a lot more, especially with the psychic covens and strange things there. And then we'll be ready for War in the Heavens.
Nice. So, aliens are obviously a big part, psychic powers, theurgy. One of the big sort of setting elements is the Fading Suns. So what can you tell us about Fading Suns? About the Fading Suns?
Well, the suns are fading.
Why?
I can tell you what everybody thinks.
Yeah.
The church thinks.
What does everybody think?
A warning of the apocalypse. We all got to get our, souls together properly, because we're all going to die eventually anyway, and the pancreator is going to judge us. Some other people might think, hey, this is a scientific problem to be solved, but darn it, the church won't let us study science, so we have to do it in secret. And maybe the secret's lying out there among the Anunnaki ruins, so we got to go dig through some ruins. So nobody knows why it's happening. They just know that the suns, and in different systems, the effects on different planets are slightly different. Some don't seem to see big effects. Some do see effects. One of the things humanity had to do when they spread out among the stars was terraform a lot of these worlds. And the thing is, a lot of these terraforming engines and technology they put in during the Second Republic, that tech is no longer understood fully. It's kind of just being kept along by people hitting it with a wrench now and then. And sometimes that stuff goes crazy. Such as there's a world called Pandemonium that was one of our first adventuring worlds in the early editions, and the terraforming engines there have gone so haywire. There's really only one place on the planet you're absolutely stable and safe, and everything else is crazy. But it's kicking up a lot of weird ruins and stuff, so people kind of flood there to go investigate the place and risk going out and so on. Other worlds have been so far a lot, calmer, but now and then strange things happen.
Nice. And so, are there, are you like dropping hints, in different books about like what's going on, or is it something that's sort of left kind of very vague for GMs to kind of do what they want with?
Well, for the Fading Suns, yes. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, it's left for the GMs. There might be some clues in War in the Heavens if people know how to put things together correctly, but they won't be.
Okay.
Won't be
There won't
overt.
be a neon sign blaring at them. They'll have to really think about it.
Nice. And so what, you've been working on can you tell us about some of the adventures that are in, what's the Intrigues book? Is it the Intrigues and Escapades book?
Oh yeah, Intrigues and Escapades. Yeah, that presents basically some dramas, as we call them, our adventures in Fading
Mm-hmm.
Suns. Part of the book actually is a bit of a source book telling you about how to run intrigues among the nobles, the merchants, and the church, the priests, because they're all up to this kind of stuff. Such as it examines how a noble is raised from birth and at different stages throughout their life to be well aware of these kind of intrigues, to be ready for them and to engage in them themselves. And priests also, the kind of things they've been up to. And even though they pretend that they're above the fray on all this kind of stuff, everybody knows that these priests are scheming the same way as everybody else, like Cardinal Richelieu and the Three Musketeers, who had a whole web of spies and so forth. And then, of course, the guilds aren't above this kind of stuff, too, whereas they're scheming a lot of times. People think of crime and crime bosses with the scravers and so on, but there's all sorts of intrigue everywhere, especially since the guilds, their power comes from the fact that they have these technology monopolies. And if any of that got out, they've got to nip that in the bud. So, for instance, like the Charioteers Guild, they make the jump keys that get you through the jump gates. And anybody who bothers to try to counterfeit those things, well, pretty soon they're going to find their factory explodes or they're going to be just gone missing, that sort of thing. So these guys can get pretty cutthroat about those sort of things, and that requires spy networks too. And so the book examines some of that and then gives you some a bunch of dramas so you can play that sort of stuff out.
And so are those like, would you consider those sort of like one-off adventures, like one-shot kind of, or are they tied
Yeah,
together?
yeah, the books in that are just one-offs. I mean, you can run them in your campaign and try to put some threads between them, but it's not presented as a campaign of run this, that, and the other. They're meant to be little. You fit them in however you think you can.
Mm-hmm.
We will, like War in the Heavens, I hope, and some others will be more of a campaign situation where you run one, then the other, and that leads to this and then that. And
Mm-hmm.
epic sort of stories you can then tell.
Nice. So let's see. In the chat, looks like people mentioned the War in the Heavens. Um, Someone says it's a running joke in the Facebook group. Every time they ask about War in the Heavens, it adds a month.
Oh, stop asking.
Yeah, I
Uh,
would say that's probably the question I see the most for sure. Um, and someone says a re-release compilation in hardcover would be nice. Hint, hint. Take my money. I think they're talking
uh,
about
War
the
in Heavens
first War in
1
the
and
Heavens.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Well, we'll have to update the rules on those too, because the symbiotes would need to work with the new system. I mean, it's pretty simple, but I know some of their powers, especially, would need a little tweaking to work with the new victory points. So,
So
yeah.
tell us about the symbiotes. I know in JM's streamed adventure they dealt with those a little bit. What are the symbiotes?
Well, they're a strange shape-changing race, and they convert humans and other creatures they encounter into symbiotes. So that's one way they kind of try to spread. And they seem to be tied mystically somehow to the planets that they take over. There's something that the stigmata intelligence has discovered. They seem to think of these things as there's a world egg, some sort of nexus or center of power or energy that they're able to establish on a world, and from there spread out and take over creatures, life forms. And they do seem to be somewhat, broken into different types. Like there's these animal type symbiotes, and then there's these plant type symbiotes.
Hmm.
I mean, some church people think they're kind of the revenge of nature for all the terraforming that happened, but other people think that no, these were genetically engineered once upon a time by the Second Republic, and they got out of the lab, and now they're spreading all over the place now because there's nothing to contain them. No one's got the tech for it anymore, the know-how. So who knows exactly what they are and why they came, but they're about to they're all about converting people to their way.
Hmm. Nice.
And
Nice.
because you won't necessarily know when someone's a symbiote when they've gotten them first. Sometimes they'll change into horrible things, but for a long while they might look normal and be
No.
among them
Right.
and stuff.
Nice.
And that's why the Inquisition comes all the time to sniff this out and look for heresy or signs of it. And that is actually one of their weaknesses, though, is psychic powers and theurgic powers. Certain types can detect them.
Hmm.
Such as there was an order called the Eschatonic Order. They're sort of these esoteric occultists. They were considered heretical for years, but as soon as it was found that some of their rites could detect symbiotes, they were okay. The church admitted them as an official order, and a lot of them now serve in the Manifest Light Legion on Stigmata, helping to sniff out symbiotes. And then the Brother Battle have the Theurgy that can help smite them a bit because they have very little protection against it. Problem
Nice.
though is they are just psychics. They're just not that common.
Hmm.
You can't run a full war with them, so they're more the elite forces.
Hmm. See in the chat, Baslack says, talk about antimony.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of black magic basically. It's dark theurgy.
Hmm.
There's all sorts of dark theurgists out there who have made pacts with things in the dark, capital D dark, and or the dark between the stars, as it's referred to as. It is believed that the jump gates create kind of a ward in a planet system as it orbits around the system. Anything outside or beyond the jump gate is in the dark, and anybody who goes out there, their soul is in danger because there's things there and certain beings. So most people never make it out past the jump gate itself. And there's all sorts of legends of creatures that occasionally make their way into the known worlds past the ward of that jump gate, such as the void krakens, creatures in space that all that's really known is spaceships wind up, destroyed or rammed. It's legends of something that looked like a creature.
Nice. Let's see. Phantom of Truth says, question of brother battles. Where did the idea that brother battles are nearly superhuman size? Is that a thing? Are they Grimson? I don't know what that means.
They aren't superhuman sized. They're normal sized. Grimsons is a type of the change. They're mutants. Basically, the Second Republic did all sorts of crazy genetic experiments, and the Grimsons were one that was reinitiated during the Emperor Wars, and they're basically super soldier types. But since they were designed for that one thing, they're very large and huge. And you can find out about them in the faction book under the section of the changed. But Brother Battle, they're normal. They're just normal humans who are highly trained in a very disciplined way. A lot of times from when they're kids, but some people are allowed in when they're adults and stuff too.
So the Grimsons are just kind of like a faction of a brother battle.
No, they're actually not related to Brother
Oh, okay.
Battle. They
Oh,
again
okay.
were super soldiers. That one of the things that happened during the Emperor Wars was a lot in their bid for power. A lot of these noble houses, including the guilds and stuff, would try to resurrect ancient Second Republic technologies that they'd lost for. So they'd create labs and try to do research and build up technology. In the strategy game, that was you were trying to build your tech trees of getting all sorts of stuff. And occasionally then the Inquisition would show up and burn your lab or this or stop it and such. But one of the things you could try to build as a weapon are these Grimsons to start spitting out these super soldiers through your genetic labs.
Hmm.
And even though the wars are over, there's still some Grimsons around. So those are the ones you could actually play them.
Cool.
They're rare, but they're there.
And so if you were gonna run a game right now, like a Fading Suns game, what do you think would give us a pitch for a Fading Suns game? Like what would you if you just said, if I just said, Bill, let's play something, what would your sort of overall idea of it be?
Well, if I was doing it with people who weren't that familiar with the situation, my main one is to start a game where you are questing knights in Imperial cohorts. The Emperor has created the Company of the Phoenix to basically get nobles from all sorts of different houses to perform missions for him. And a lot of these are going into barbarian space. They were kind of the forefront of investigating and exploring the Voldrak worlds and the worlds of this other empire called the Kuriga Caliphate. And so what I would do is have a troop that's based around that. One of them, like one of the nobles, would be the questing knight. There could be more than one. And priests and merchants can serve in the cohorts, which are there to aid the knights. And I would have them go to Hargard, which is the hot spot right now. That's where the Empress came from. So the world is now claimed by Alexius, but there are a lot of people there who do not agree with that. And so there's sort of hot and cold wars there going on. There are known world factions going in who want to convert, the priests and stuff, but then there are guilds who want to kind of kiss up to the enemy side because there's cool stuff they want to get from them and so on. And then, of course, there's all the factions of the known worlds who think, wait a minute, is this a situation we can use to cause Alexius to have some failures there and, besmirch him and maybe even find some allies against him if we want to start a new Emperor Wars. So it's a hotbed of all sorts of stuff going on. And I'd plop them down there and start running. The Game Master book presents the basics of Hargard and gives you a beginning adventure in there.
Cool.
And then go from there.
So you said that that's what you'd do if there were kind of new players. If you had some like hardcore players that knew a lot of the old lore and stuff, what would you like to see? What would you like to do?
Then I would probably set something on Byzantium Secundus, the throne world, and have a game I'd probably start at a little higher level and have a game where, again, it's more like Three Musketeers in space, where these guys have been caught in these courtly intrigues. On some levels, it's just, some rival trying to embarrass somebody, but that was the whole plot of Three Musketeers that led to all sorts of adventures because they were just trying to embarrass the queen. They weren't trying to dethrone her or anything. But that kind of stuff would build and build, and then you'd be making enemies, enmities, and all sorts of allies, and you eventually be getting into rubbing shoulders of some of the major figures.
So tell us, Bill, what's your favorite noble house?
Oh, geez, you gotta make moves. Oh, I don't have a favorite. Poor House Chowky, that's who. The Chowky were actually a house that was overthrown by their military, who are now the Hazat. But there was a world that was rediscovered a few years ago called Ivor, and there are people on Ivor who claim to be the descendants of House Chowky. And if that's true, they have a claim on all the entire worlds of the Hazat. So I'd say I'm rooting for the Chowky there.
Nice. There you
The
go.
problem is with the Chowky is there's a whole slang phrase, the Chowky stride, and that basically means to send someone out an airlock, because that's how the Hazat got rid of the Chowky.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool. So let's see. Baslak just asked, what happened with Kurga in the last 10 years?
Well, Kurga, there was a constant war going on a planet called Hera between the Hazat and the Kurgans. It's right on the edge of Hazat space. But somehow, some way, that jump gate between Hera and the rest of the Caliphate closed. This happened a lot during the Second Republic, when the Second Republic felt a lot of worlds to stop the spread of violence and chaos, shut their jump gates. The problem is nobody understands jump gates enough. So they might open again next week or next millennia. Nobody really has any clue once that happens. And the jump gate to the Caliphate has closed, and who knows when it's going to open again. Could be any time, could be a long time from now. And the Zot is using that to actually then finally make their move on the world, because now the Kurgans can't get reinforcements. So the only way to figure out what's going into the Caliphate is you've got to now go all the way through Voldrak space to the sort of back door on the other side. and nobody's really done that yet, at least in public. Nobody knows. I'm sure the Emperor might have scouts and emissaries, but we don't really know exactly.
And is that like we don't know? Most people don't know. Like, is that included in the books, or is that hinted at?
Yeah,
Or
most people don't really know now that it's closed what the Caliph and all the Kurdish Caliphate is up to since that closed.
Mhm.
We know what the refugees on Hira now, the ones who are fighting the war, they don't know what's going on either. This is a big thing for them because they've got a big holy pilgrimage between their worlds, and the end of it was on Hira,
Mm.
and now that's cut off. So there could be all sorts of religious strife going on in the Caliphate. Um, they could be preparing for to go through the Voldrak space to come back and try to get Hera. Who knows? Or doing all sorts of strange things to try to figure out how to open that jump gate. So who knows? We'll eventually get into that. But for now, we're concentrating on the Voldrak, and then
Mhm.
we'll get
Right.
out of it.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about streams. So tonight, JM DeFogie and his crew will be playing Fading Suns at 5:30 Pacific on Twitch. The new arc is called Curse of the Abandoned. There's been, they had a session 0 for that, and then I think they're up to 4 episodes now. So if you want to see how characters are created, go check out their session 0. They walk through that, and then they have four sessions with this crew. So you can still get into that. And I know JM is working on converting all those to podcasts, which should be out relatively soon because I know he's been working on that for a little while. So if you want if you want to just have some audio, I know when I like walk the dogs, exercise and whatnot, I like to listen to different audio. So that's good content. And Bill, you and Andrew Greenberg, the other co-creator of Fading Suns, have continued your heretical musing show. The next episode is next week and continues every 2 weeks on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. What's your experience been doing that?
It's good. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes we bring on some of the authors who are working on stuff or who have worked on Fading Sun stuff. We get some good questions. And last week I put out some posts asking for more questions. So I've got a host of them. I'm collecting them all on a
Awesome.
big Word document. And this coming Tuesday, we'll tackle a lot of them.
Cool. Yeah. So if you guys like, the kind of stuff that Bill's been talking about, all the details of the Fading Suns, I know he goes even deeper there because Andrew obviously knows a lot about it too, and so you guys kind of just get to talking a lot, especially with the other authors and stuff like that. So if you want a lot of background on Fading Suns and details and answers why and more questions asked, definitely check that out. Heretical Musings, again, 2 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday. The next one will be next week.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think if there's no more questions in the chat, we'll give you just a minute if you want to ask a couple more questions. Go for it. And again, don't go ahead and go to gameontabletop.com and you can find the late pledge for Pax Alexius. It is up till June 7th, so you got a few more days for that. You can get in, get all of the great content that is not going to be released anywhere else after this.
Yeah, but there's some good stuff there. So if you haven't pledged, pledge. I worked my ass off on this stuff.
Nice.
It's true, you
Phantom of
did.
Truth asks, will there be further exploration of Satharism?
Sothorism. Yeah, we'll be doing that in the psychic book that's going to be coming up. Sothorism is basically when you go through the jump gate, as they discovered, people come out the other side in a trance and just say the word Sothra comes off their lips and have this ecstasy. And it created a whole religion. And the first republic, way back when they were doing this, figured out how to block that, how to dampen it, so nobody suffered that anymore. And of course, the church thinks it's demonic. And Sotherists were basically they were addicted to this, basically. And then they actually wanted to convert others so that they would intentionally get onto ships and disable the dampers so that everybody on the ship would not suffer, but experience this
Right.
ecstasy also. But yet, what's going on? There's this whispering of demons. What's happening? And so various times they've put down the cults of Sothras, and that's one of the things Brother Battle was created to do originally, was stamp out Sothrists. But yeah, we'll be getting into Sothras a little bit more.
Will
Someone
that
asked also
be?
about what's that?
Oh, so the Sothraism stuff that'll be coming in future waves.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be coming with a psychic book in the future
Psychic
waves
book.
because there's special psychic powers that being exposed to the Sothra effect can awaken in people.
Oh, nice. Cool. So let's see. Admiral Nelson asks, can you tell us about the Philosopher's Stones and should shard and
Soul shard.
soul shards? Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are basically leftover relics from the Anunnaki, the jump gate builders. Philosopher's Stones is just a general term they use for a relic that can do something really powerful. These things are legendary. It is rumored that Vladimir, the first emperor, had a Philosopher's Stone that allowed him to travel without a jump gate. That, in a sense, he created his own little jump effect, which is unprecedented. The problem is when he was killed and his ship went down, the stone disappeared with it. No one knows where it is. But there are other stones of all sorts of legend. And soul shards are items also, these sort of crystalline sort of things that are found in Anunnaki ruins. And they are tied to psychic power and theurgic power, and they can boost it and empower it and do all sorts of things like that. As to how they work, no one really knows. These things we have a whole scale of tech levels from 0 to 10. And the Second Republic, the height of human, ingenuity on this stuff was tech level 8. And they never got as high as Anunnaki tech, which is at tech level 9 and 10. And so no one really gets this stuff yet, how it works, why it works.
So these things are kind of
How,
like rare artifacts that.
yeah, these are basically, magic artifacts you find in places.
Cool.
And once we get into War in Heaven's Pantheon, we'll be introducing some more Philosopher's Stones.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. So thank you, Bill. Where can people find you online?
Well, you can find me on Facebook under my name. You can find me on my website at bill-bridges.com, Twitter at bbridges, and I'm all over these Ulysses things too. So
Definitely.
easy to find.
Yeah. So
Awesome, Bill. Thanks for joining us, pal. Appreciate it.
yeah,
Thanks
and
for having me.
so thanks for watching the Ulysses Worlds show. If you like the show, please follow and subscribe to our channels on Twitch and YouTube, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss anything. For Ulysses Spila, I'm Robert Adducci, and this is Tim Brown.
How you doing? Thanks
Uh,
for tuning in, everybody.
yeah, thanks, and we'll see you next Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific for more Ulysses Worlds news.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.